Welcome to the wonderful world of wine. We are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the wonderful world of wine. How are you, Kim?
I'm doing pretty well, Mark. And you?
Everything is just great. And once again, we are happy to have a very special guest. Seth Cysewski is here joining us. And Seth is the founder, inventor of Mistral Wine Cards. And Seth, first off, why don't you start out and tell our listeners about your background in wine and the idea behind the product that you're going to tell our listeners about today?
Well, first I'll say that my path is mostly non-linear. So unfortunately, it doesn't always make sense. But about 20 years ago, I got into, I started working at a marketing agency, and I started working with wine brands. And right around that time, I was in my 20s, my boss had a cellar, and he pulled out first wine that like really made me go, whoa, and just put my nose in. I couldn't get my nose out of it. So these two things are happening at the same time. And so I kind of like locked on. I said, hey, I'm going to keep working with these wine brands. And so I've been doing that the rest of the time. Additionally, I've spent some time in between gigs. I've carried a bag before, selling wine. I've worked at a wine bar as a bartender just because I really enjoy it. So I've kind of just followed wine all the way around, everywhere from wine marketing to hospitality, and we're doing a bunch of brand work. And I guess, how did I end up here? Why did I end up doing this? I guess the short answer would be that I just kept seeing all of these training tools go really unused. And the best way I could put this is that for as long as I've been doing this, it's been around 20 years, I haven't seen wine marketing and communication change too much. And I've seen a lot of this younger generation. Everyone's concerned that everyone's kind of leaving wine behind a little bit. And I just kind of felt like we needed a new approach. And so I've just been really thinking about this for a bunch of years now. And as everyone's gone to phones and doing swipes and apps and all of these different things, and I thought, I just thought there was a better way to approach it. And so this is kind of where it's led me.
So for our listeners, if you could describe your product, your pack of wine cards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. So I like to say wine cards, they're cards that make wine make sense. We've created it's a wine education system based on a hands-on, like playing card format that kind of breaks wine into its wine fundamentals and then just makes it really easy to use at table, tasting room, or even a retail shop. So they're the same size as playing cards. It's a 55 card deck. It's in a tin, and I have broken wine into essentially like four types, or these cards into four types. And they're the way I think about wine. And so I felt like we could create a simpler structure. And so I have grape, and there's red and white, and they're all color coded. So I have grapes, regions, and these are all across the globe for this first deck. And then I have terroir and winemaking. And essentially each one of these cards dives deep, but also keeps it fun and visual into each one of these different things. And so it just makes it really easy to pick up a wine, grab one card, two cards, five cards. And essentially it tells the wine story with these these hands-on cards that are just kind of, I think, fun and easy to use.
And I had what I want to call a Jerry Maguire moment, Seth, when I read your article in wineindustrycareers.com, and you said why wine education needs to leave the screen. And I don't know if Kim and you or our listeners can relate to the Jerry Maguire thing, but you said the digital wine education is not working. It's the content, not the medium. And I was thinking back, and I'm sure Kim can relate to this. Every time we've taken wine classes, wine exams, we do flashcards, we do wine cards. And that was always the way we learned the content, is with these cards. and not digital medium. That's all that's out there now. So is that the reason you came up with this idea, that that's how you learned wine? And can you explain more about your worries about the digital versus the
Yeah.
actual card?
No, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm a visual learner, and I have a ton of wine books behind me right now. I love all of them. I love diving deep. I loved all of my wine schooling as well. That being said, so much of what we do nowadays has just gone on to into different apps. And this is going to the grocery store. This is going, anywhere I need to go. I'm having to pull out my phone. I'm having to scan a QR code to look at the menu, something. And my wrist doesn't even want to do it anymore. And second of all, like while it seems intuitive, having all of these different menu branches and trees and trying to get to where I'm trying to get to and find connections, I can't lay it out. And then the moment I pick up my phone, everyone else picks up their phone. And so there's nothing interactive about it or social about it. So I've just kind of become disenchanted with PDFs and screens as they are. And I found that they don't really work in trade. And so when I was in trade, I mean, I talked about it a little bit in the article, but I was working at a restaurant actually last year in the Seattle area. They had 13 wines by the glass, and they were changing them all the time. The buyer was very excited, because the salespeople would come and get them all excited, and then they would drop off, I guess, PDFs that are printed. What I noticed is that none of our servers understood, everyone's trying to memorize a shelf talker or like a little note, the tasting notes or whatever, so they can go out there. But that wasn't the same thing as understanding what was happening with the wine. And they didn't understand the grape varietals behind it. There was just no training in place. And I started thinking about what would be a fun way or an easier way for people, both as like teams, working teams, and then also individuals that want to learn more, like what would be the best medium for that? And frankly, so yes, flashcards, I worked with a lot of flashcards. And then to be honest, I also remember collecting baseball cards as a kid, and just like this idea that I could hold on to these things. They were really interesting and they were fun to play with. And whereas like, I don't want to pick up my phone, but I want to pick up cards. And so when I started doing some prototyping, it became really clear really quickly that people gravitated to it. Everyone's looking at each other and having conversations about what's on the table instead of picking up their phone, which just felt to me like it just kind of shut everything down.
The point that you make about all of these things that we have on our phones that are meant to increase the interactive way that we communicate with each other about wine does tend to sometimes do the opposite, where we've all got our eyes on our phones. So I really like this idea of having something that can spark conversation, and whether it's, a game or the cards or something different and something creative. And I appreciate that what you're doing here isn't just for the student learning things or the person who's working a shift at the restaurant learning things, but that way that you can have just regular consumers communicate with each other by using these too.
Yeah, and I just feel like there's a whole nother generation that is they're looking for something more approachable, and they also want to learn. They're also curious, and I just don't know if we've been meeting them in the way they need to be met. So yeah, it's interesting. I did think about that as well. I wanted to be able to meet anyone where they were at, and then be able to take them deeper. So that it's a pretty big challenge, right? Like how can you speak to seasoned wine professionals, but also just curious drinkers that are just like trying to understand what Beaujolais is, around Thanksgiving time, and then be able to like bridge the gap so that there is that shared language and communication, so it doesn't turn into this intellectual, like educational overwhelm, essentially, especially for new and curious drinkers. And so I just found that like having visual cues and like a simple structure was just able to create quicker learning and faster recall, especially at trade. And then using like just paragraphs of text, which and then trying to go to Wikipedia or here or there and, trying to build on that.
Well, you certainly pack a lot of information onto each of the cards. I will say that.
Yeah, and I know it was absolutely the most challenging part, right? And so it's like,
yeah, I bet the editing was tough.
Oh, editing was so tough, and for a bunch of reasons, right? So, like, one, which cards make it in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a wine nerd, so like, honestly, I want like 100 of these decks. Like, so I want to dive into, Italy needs its own 50 decks probably, but like trying to figure out what goes into a deck, right? That you can speak to it, and then what goes onto the card, right? And then so like trying to design something that is both beautiful and simple without dumbing anything down, and then still making it feel welcome while staying accurate. It's a little bit. It was a challenge. Yeah, by far, that was the toughest part for sure.
So in a digital world and you have a physical product, what are the challenges you're seeing with this approach? It's not a new approach to wine education. So what are the challenges you're facing? What are you fighting, and what feedback did you get on your article saying things need to change?
Yeah, no, I think the article was actually really well received. I think that there's kind of a groundswell behind everyone's been pushed online and onto their phones for so long. I think in some ways we forget what an analog world was like before this, which wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago we had to remember phone numbers and we had to go to the wall to pick up the phone, right? To call my friends or whatnot. So it wasn't that long ago. So I heard a lot of good things. I think there was a little bit of squabbling over possibly the means in which we leave the screen and like how it's communicated. But I think directionally, I got really positive feedback for that. Yeah, it was good. And then as far as like any other challenges go, like in this social media era and stuff, I think, I think people have just been really conditioned to looking for the app or some other digital piece. And so I think maybe it's not that it's foreign, it's just a little, they're just a little. It's different. It's different again.
It's a flashback to the way education was, how we learned. But I noticed you incorporate the cards in, say, wine reviews. I like how you would put a bottle of wine and then you'd put a couple of cards in the picture showing how it relates to the wine. So if it was a Cabernet, you'd have the Cabernet card, you'd have the terroir of that Cabernet. So I like that, how you're incorporating the physical card into a digital review. I think that's a good way it can be used as well.
So this is like where the wine nerd in me really comes out. But so first, like I can appreciate the digital age and the reach it gives people. I think it's just unparalleled. There is no way I would be able to launch a product like this. And it would just take years to be able to do something like this and establish accounts and all of that stuff and meet consumers and have them find out about this. So that's where digital just incredible. And then as far as like having the cards, I mean, obviously this product is like a child of mine, there's something, I created something that I wanted, that I always felt like I wanted to have. First, I printed them and laminated them myself. They looked horrible, but being able to have tastings. Like I love dragging my friends to taste things, I mean, even I was thinking the other day, I was drinking this Spanish Grenache that coming from I think like 60-degree slopes, and they have to clip in they're on the side of this granite face. And I was just thinking, oh, it'd be so cool to do a tasting around slope, the slope card, and everyone brings something with the extreme terroir or something, and being able to like visually and physically essentially express that wine in a way that is different than two sentences, which is what everyone does. But being able to kind of expand on that and make it a tactile, tangible experience has been really fun. I love pulling out the different cards and being like, oh, these apply. And then people pick them up and then they learn something versus having to, versus maybe going to Wikipedia or Googling something, but people just don't do that often in that context.
When I first opened up my pack of cards and I was, kind of thumbing through them, I'm like, oh, I'm coming up with all these ideas. How can I use them in my wine classes? Like, can I use them with my friends? Can I use them with my students? But they seem to be a pretty good springboard for using them for other purposes. And I wanted to ask you, any conversations that you've seen or you've been a part of where people have told you that they've used these in interesting ways, either in a fun setting or in a work setting?
Yeah, that was actually been the most exciting part about building this, because I had this idea of what I was trying to solve a little bit, but I hadn't actually like flushed out a business for it necessarily. I was kind of just building like a little bit of a fun Seth project for myself. And I knew the problem that I'd just been talking about with you guys, but building it was kind of for myself. So what's ended up happening is yes, I find that consumers and curious drinkers and my friends that aren't super into wine, like this is something that they get really interested in about, and they want to pick up the cards and they want to talk about it, and then they ask questions, so it allows them to go deeper. I just met with my WSET cohort from when I went through and got my level 3, and we were talking about in terms of the cards, and I created some wine tasting tools that are also in these cards. So I mentioned the 4 types earlier, but there's also like lexicon, which is just like all of the tasting terms for red wines and white wines, and then like a little structure card to talk about the structure of the wine, and then faults. And so just thinking through, and then I have WSET Wine School testing this right now with their WSET 3 cohort, so for their tasting and their practice as well. I had wine shops that immediately like, oh, hey, I can sell a lot more wine this way. And it's a really nice, it's a giftable item, and people that are into wine, then all of a sudden they come back and they can get a little more curious, and it really gives directionally wine shop owners assistance. I mean, they love talking about wine, but when someone comes in like, hey, I just read about this thing about maritime, like that's really interesting. I didn't realize that. Like, do you have anything for me? And wine shop owners absolutely love this because it's a tool to help them help their customers and speak to them. And then we've also had good response from tasting rooms too. I've had both, hey, we're looking at training our staff across multiple locations because it's a common language. It's something that we can have here and keep behind the bar, and we can train on it. And then it also doubles as guest education as well. So when someone asks a question, it's like, hey, we can pull this out. So anyway, I've just been kind of overwhelmed with the positive responses, honestly, and then everyone having like these different use cases for how they're going to be able to possibly use them. And so like, I'm really excited. I have to tell you one quick other thing. I don't want to ramble too much, but originally I had thought, maybe I'll make this a game. But well, first of all, it turns out I am terrible at gameplay. There is absolutely, I have no idea. Like, I'm writing rules and this and that, and I'm like, this is terrible. And not only that, like, I just felt like it would pigeonhole it too much because I thought these things were so versatile. And so in the end, we ended up basically creating, it's like a playing card deck. And then I feel like so many people are going to figure out different ways to utilize it and play with it. And so I think there's probably 100 games in here. I'm just not maybe the one to to give them to everyone. But yeah, I've been just like overwhelmed by how positive the feedback has been and how everyone is like showing them to everyone else and reps and distributors and trying to figure out different ways they can use them. So it's just been really overwhelming, and I'm just like, I'm really grateful.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we're your hosts, Mark and Kim, with special guest today, Seth Cysewski. You can find more information about Seth and his product, the Mistral Wine Cards, at mistralcards.com and on social media at Mistral Cards. We're supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find our website at thewww.wine. So we are back talking to Seth and his Mistral Wine Education Cards. And we were talking a little bit before the break about how they've been used and people kind of using them in creative ways. So right now we have in front of us the first set. Is this the only set that is out there currently?
It is.
Okay. And I saw on your website that there is the possibility of more sets and specialty sets. So I kind of wanted to know, like, what's next for these cards?
So I put a little voting section on the website for people to vote. And I mean, honestly, I'm not sure yet what the next one will be. I have a bunch of ideas. I'm here in Seattle, Washington. And so I grew up learning on Washington wines. So I would love to put together, whether it's a Washington deck and an Oregon deck. I may just do a Pacific Northwest deck. And then that way I can pull in like Okanagan as well from British Columbia into it and kind of highlight some of our best regions, I guess, or the more distinct and established regions. I think it would be really interesting. And then I would love to get over and do France and then dive deep into probably a Burgundy deck, probably a Bordeaux deck. I mean, Ken, to be really frank, I want to do a lot of decks, but I have to contain myself. And also I need to get this thing going and establish some clientele and some users first so that we can get some more feedback. And then we can just kind of check them off one by one. So, it'll be by demand. And then we'll create more decks For sure.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, the sky really is the limit. Like I said, I just didn't want to create like 5 or 10 decks out of the gate. They're a little bit of a heavy lift to build each one, but I thought this is a good place to start right now. It covers a lot of ground, but yeah, really the sky is the limit, and I would encourage anyone to go and vote on what they would love to see next. I'll take feedback and comments. I love hearing from wine lovers and people that are passionate about this stuff, and I would love to create content for them.
And I'm sure our listeners can hear, Seth, that the world of wine, there are so many ideas you can work with on a product like this. And you could even work with societies that teach certain subjects and create a card for all those subjects. So I can see endless possibilities for you. Can you explain the reason, the name? Why did you pick the name? And maybe tell our listeners the meaning in the wine world?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So it's Mistral, and it is named after the Mistral wind, which is in central and southern France. It blows down right right at the top of the Rhone Valley, and then all the way down into the southern Rhone, where it cools the vineyards. I like the name. I am a sucker for French wine. I love all wine, but especially the northern Rhone is really special to me. And so yeah, it just kind of fit. I was trying to think of something that was pronounced and was like a little cheeky and fun. And so yeah, we ended up naming it Mistral.
So let's talk a little bit more to the listeners about the cards. You mentioned the categories. If we could just, I want them to understand the format. So the grapes, the regions, the terroir, and technique in winemaking. So
yeah,
if someone has a grape card, it can be, they're color coded. So there's red grapes, there's white grapes, and each card has a note, the countries the grape is from, and then like aromas and flavors and symbols for the grapes and the varietals, correct?
Yes. For each of the different cards, we try to create obviously like a common language and formatting. So everything should feel very familiar. And so when it comes to grapes, then we utilized and we built what we call it's a bar system. So in each of the opposing corners, upper left and lower right, if you'll see when you go to the website, we'll talk about it. But we were using bars to kind of talk about it. So with grapes, we have like color range. For like region, we have the climate type and the temperature, right? So there can be hot continental or cool continental. So you can have these different types. And again, it's really nerdy, but it's pretty simple on the card. And then in the lower right, we have like some smaller little 3-step bars that we use to give more information. And so for grapes, like we may do tannin or alcohol content or acid, just different ways that people can really like get an idea, like stepping back of like, hey, what's this grape? What's it look like as far as like experientially, like, how does it taste and such? And then when we get into things like terroir, we have like fog, right? So that's interesting because then we can start talking about like disease risk or cooling effect and diurnal range, which is like a super nerdy thing, but it's super cool. It's the temperature difference between day and night. And so if you're up in Argentina or up in those highlands, like it gets really cold at night. So what does that do? And so being able to kind of break these down into like these little bars, it allows us to tell stories that are relevant to each factor and then kind of put it into each card.
It's like a choose your own adventure for wine with all the information. It's like kind of like a playing card game, right? You can like kind of mix and match them and mix them up in different ways in order to focus on one topic or another. I think it's quite creative.
Thank you. Yeah, and I hope I'm explaining this well because it's not
I've seen them, so it makes sense in my mind. So.
Because it's not digital and because it is physical, it is best if you're holding the cards, and you can see them on the website as well. I mean, we have a lot of great photos, but one of the things I think about with these cards too is that, kind of like we were talking about, whether it is training for trade or for just consumers, for those of us that just love wine or interested about wine, like having these cards like this with all of this information, like you could just read the 2 sentences on each one and you'll learn something. But if you do decide to go deeper and you go into the bars, the choose your own adventure, it all kind of starts to make sense a lot more. And I think it's so amazing that you can use these while you're drinking wine. And it makes it's really easy to correlate different things. I think of wine knowledge a lot like a spider web. And so when I'm drinking wine and I see that, and then I'm like, oh, I am tasting that high acid. That's so interesting. That's probably because of this elevation. And now, and that makes sense. And I think, I think it's really cool like that. that.
And I know you touched base earlier. You mentioned to Kim about maybe the younger generation. What's your bigger picture as far as this product helping the younger generation get interested in wine? Do you think this is the type of product that's going to bring more interest in wine?
I do. I'm very bullish on it. It was definitely on my mind. My daughter is not old enough to drink yet. She'll be 15 coming up. Doesn't mean she can appropriately evaluate a wine now, but she's not super interested in it, and I don't want to like chase her down and like force her to be interested in wine. But I have been thinking about watching them on TikTok and all of these things and thinking, I think that they're going to want to come back. And what I notice is that they really do looking for approachability and context. And I think from what I've seen over the years, and again, I think I'm an outlier because I want to dive into the information. I think we've talked over a lot of potential new wine drinkers over the last generation or so. And it's something that I've noticed, and I think about this often. I think no one wants to feel dumb when ordering wine. But yet wine is really the only subject where people apologize before asking a question. And I think it's a huge miss. And so trying to come up with something that is more welcoming and approaching and a little fun and just removing the snobbery, I think is like really crucial to if we want to communicate with the next generation. That's just my feeling on it. And so that's what I'm betting. But, this is less more of a business consideration. I mean, obviously I want to create a sustainable business that will last a long time. But like first and foremost, I'm just an advocate for wine. I just love wine and I want to see more people get excited and curious and explore. And so I'm betting that this is a much better way or a different way, and where hopefully we can meet some new wine drinkers.
So you wrote another article, Why the Wine Industry Needs to Stop Chasing Trends. What are you going to do when the cards become a trend? Are you going to be disappointed?
Tricky, Mark, tricky.
No, Mark dug deep. I have opinions, clearly. I think
you're hoping this is the next trend, right? I mean, and can you explain what you think the current trends are? Is it too much digital influence in wine?
Yeah. So,
I mean, I don't feel AI has taken over the wine world as much as maybe the political world in this country. When I see something online about wine, I feel it's true. It's the real thing. But do you think that is out of control, that type of trend?
Yeah. So, okay. So I want to be like really cautious because I've been working around large wine brands for a long time, helping them with their like national activations and such. And so I've seen a lot of let's call it innovation, I think is what, a lot of times what they call it. And, a lot of these wine brands that I was working with are very high volume. And so, for them to pencil out, first of all, it's amazing because they keep entire industries and entire like areas and regions afloat. And so like, I don't want to speak ill of that. But what I also noticed is that sometimes I think that what I meant by trends is I think sometimes I'm getting old now, but like I noticed them experimenting with a lot of things that I thought got away from maybe wine's core essence. And I felt like I don't want to take people away from what wine could be before they know what it could be. And then after that, put ice cubes in it, put glitter in it, do whatever you want. But I would love for people to first understand what's out there, and then go from there. And I think I wrote that in response to just seeing a bunch of like really crazy stuff that I thought it was maybe adverse to getting people interested in wine. But to be honest, I mean, I guess any way someone gets there is A-okay with me.
I just want to work on that a little bit, get more out of you on this. So you feel like the 90% of the wine world is the big brands.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're obviously doing something right because everybody goes to them. But do you feel like they're missing out, not educating their consumers enough on their product or what's in that product? And a product like yours can help someone really understand what they're drinking instead of the marketing side?
Yes, I absolutely think that. I think wine education is a heavy lift. It's a super heavy lift. And I think, especially for large wine brands, I've watched them struggle with it for years. And then how do you differentiate? I mean, especially with the large wine brands, I think stories are generally what differentiates and it's what sells, and packaging, obviously labels and such. I think if you asked any wine brand, or they would tell you that, I mean, education would be high on their list of something that they could accomplish if there was an easier route, and they weren't just, it wasn't just noise. What I found is that a lot of people are trying to say the same thing over each other, and everyone's talking over each other for so long, and so I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, I have no problem if this becomes a trend. Yeah, I mean, I think anything that brings people into the fold is a great way. I mean, you could talk about any little piece of wine and you will find all kinds of detractors from it, whether it's Kirkland Signature and Costco's wines, or a million other topics, sense. Right? I think that anything that brings people in and makes people a little more curious and has them come in, like, hey, this is a big tent. Everyone's involved. I was just thinking that when I wrote that article that, like, I just wasn't sure of the way everyone was trying to bring everyone into the tent. But I get it. It's tough. And I think people have been in the box so often for so long. It's really hard to see something new. And there just hasn't been enough new, I think.
No, I think the product is great. I think a lot of problems with educational cards that are now digital, these flashcard sites, you don't know if that information is the source. What's the source? Is it the correct information you're getting out there? So to have a physical product, someone is behind this product, Seth is making this card, Seth believes in this product. I think that's better for wine education than they're taking a shot, picking up something off the internet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think wine is always at its best if there's a human connection there. I mean, that's how I got into wine. I went into my wine shop and I met a friend who was around my age, and he was working there and he was learning about it. And so we're learning the wine together. Now he's a winemaker, I mean, but it's these conversations that people have, it's this excitement and stuff. I think that if we get into these little digital silos, yeah, and especially now in this world where no one really knows kind of what's what's up, what's down. I think you really need to have that human connection. And really, wine at its core is human. I mean, it's an agricultural product passed down for almost 8,000 years. I mean, we're talking about families' livelihood and their passion, and it's a very human product. And so I think, yeah, we need to stay connected. That's what I believe.
Great.
Well, your enthusiasm and your passion for it certainly does come through. So I think that we're really lucky to have, even if it's just one more little thing that we can have in our tool belt for ways to talk to people about wine and make it, I'd say, easier, but more approachable and add a little bit of fun and all those things that we try to do.
Yeah. And I think absolutely. And I think one of the things I was thinking about too is that, like, I wanted to meet people where they're at and be able to take them deeper. But sure, like, these cards are not a replacement for formal wine education. No, this is not a replace a master of wine or a master somm. I would love to believe, and I have a master somm with them right now and a master of wine. So hopefully I want to get, like, critical feedback, right? I want to make these things as good as I can. But I also believe that these are they're there to help, and to be an accessory and to be something that everyone can use, and it'll help them along in their journey. It's not meant to be a replace anything else. Yeah. And I just think that, in general, and especially as we try to bring new people into the tent, I just think most people don't need more facts necessarily. I think just a simpler structure for learning that helps it stick. That was really what I was trying to focus on here.
Well, we appreciate it, Seth. And for our listeners, please go to mistralcards.com. You can see the product, purchase the product, support Seth. And the reason we do this show is for our listeners to hear stories like yours and hear about these products and help them learn wine the way we think they should be doing it. Get it out there and explore. So thank you, Seth. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been such a pleasure. I love listening to your guys' podcast. You guys have just some amazing guests, and I love the work you guys are doing. And also, we'll just spread the good word.
Thank you for joining us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. We have been your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio, located in Franklin, Massachusetts. Our website is www.wine. Today's special guest was Seth Cysewski of MistralCards.com. You can also find him on Instagram. It's at Mistral Card. And you can find us on all social media at The Wonderful World of Wine. Cheers.
Cheers.
Wine, wine, wine.